living within your means? What does that mean in a sense? And how can you ensure that you are living within your means?
What you need, what you make.
Is it a need? Is it a want?
People and money, welcome back to the show. This is a show where we discuss all things to do with personal finances and personal managing of money. We bring experts, from this financial sector, people that deal and handle money on a daily basis, to come and share their knowledge regarding how best we can handle money. Ncumisa Nodaka, welcome to the show.
Hi, Stan. Thank you for having me.
She's a managing director and founder of Ncumisa Chartered Accountants and Auditors, an accounting firm that is based in Port Elizabeth, also called Irregular, in South Africa. Ncumisa, last week, or in the last episode, we were speaking about expenses, monthly expenses,
Yes.
Typical monthly expenses, what on a monthly basis generally one spends. And today we are engaging on, fixed and variable expenses. Can you, what exactly is this? Can you unpack this for us?
Okay, so looking at the two terms, fixed and variable, what we would term as a fixed cost is a cost that is known and also one that remains the same amount every month, right? And a variable cost would be one that fluctuates dependent on almost like a pay-as-you-use basis. So the more of it you consume, the higher the cost at the end of the day. So that would be a typical example of electricity, and a fixed cost. A typical example would be your rental or your bond amount.
Exactly. And from what you're saying, what I'm understanding is that when it comes to your fixed expenses, these are the expenses that you can't change. Like for you to change those expenses, you have to make a fundamental change to your life. Like, for example, the rental that you're talking about. If you were living in, in an upmarket house, which is 20,000 rand or $2,000 rental every month, that is your fixed expense on a monthly basis. To change that, it means you have to move the house and move to a different place, to a different suburb, and maybe kids have to change schools and so on and so forth. So these are kind of like expenses which you are really kind of stuck with, unless if you fundamentally change something. Is that also another way of expressing it?
Yes, definitely, that is true.
Yeah, and then the variable ones may be those being the ones that you can say let's save on electricity, let's switch off the lights, if you're not in the bathroom, or let's use less water and so on and so forth. So Ncumisa, why is it important when it comes to budgeting and managing your personal finances to distinguish between these?
Okay, so like you mentioned, when we're looking at the fixed, there's not really much you can do, because even in a rental contract, you already signed to say, I'm going to stay here for the next 12 months. And that contract will normally have a cancellation clause where you might lose out on your deposit or whatever. But generally, for the next 12 months, this is a set amount that you are then required to pay. So when we're looking at the fixed costs, there's not much movement in the sense of much saving that we can do there. But when you look at the variable costs, now those are the costs that can actually then end up costing you a lot if you don't manage them well. For example, your cell phone contract. Your cell phone contract is a fixed amount, and maybe you need to load airtime to make use of it. But the more you use that phone, the more you talk on it, the more data you might load on it, that expense then grows, and it might grow to a point that it exceeds what you had initially planned to spend on it.
Yeah. And actually that brings another very interesting, I always want to call back to that point where we get to the gray area of a need and a want. Like, how much data do you need against how much data do you want? Do you need to have an uncapped internet, or you can actually survive on so many gigs of data on a monthly basis, depending on how much you have as your disposable income, really. In terms of the money that you have available, Ncumisa, and looking at it in terms of your fixed and your variable expenses, how should these relate? I understand, obviously, your expenses should be lower than your income, but I think there is points whereby they're just high, right? Or maybe they're higher than your income. Where do you cut? Do you start by changing your fixed expenses or your variable expenses? How should one start dealing with that?
The easier starting point is starting with your variable expenses, because those are ones that are more in your control. And with the point that you raised about, do you need uncapped data or internet, for example, like I indicated in our previous episodes, was that each one's budget is different, and one has to be very realistic to where exactly they are in life. For example, if I am in sales, or I am a sales rep, then talking on the phone might be something that's quite important to me getting an income, because maybe I'm a commission earner. So someone who doesn't really need to be on the phone versus me being in sales, then our needs for a cell phone contract might differ.
Wow, that's a great one. And then on the fixed expenses, there's also another class of expenses one can term as fixed, depending on how you look at it, like once-off expenses. These are, those. Can we talk about those as well?
So once-off expenses would be something like if you need to take your car for a service, you know exactly how many kilometers your car needs to have traveled, or they say it's the earlier of something, but it's kilometers, and also after a certain time frame. Then you need to go take in your car for a service, or you need to also then change your tires. So those are events that we can kind of plan for. Another would be a family holiday. I know in December in South Africa, a lot of people go on holiday. So those are events that are fixed, and we can also plan for them in our previous budgeting months.
And I'm always guilty of that one. I have to plan for that December holiday in November. I don't know why I can't budget.
You know what? Like I mentioned in our previous episode, that you need to be very realistic. When you set up your budget, if you know in December, you cannot plan for it in November, because then it means there's a few other items that are not going to. Either you can reduce all your variable costs by maybe 20%, just to ensure that you are able to then afford that family trip. But what I've seen happen is that's where the credit card pops up, or a lot of credit card applications at the banks, just so you can finance that holiday. And that is an indication that you are living outside of your means.
And I must say, Ncumisa, I saw there on your list, you added Mother's Day and Father's Day. And I really think it was just trying to create a balance. I'm not sure who budgets for Father's Day. I know people budget for Women's Day, Women's Rights Day, Mother's Day. Ncumisa, this has been great. Thank you so much. What are we going to be talking about next?
So in our next episode, we actually look at how to actually compile a budget. Now that we've actually discussed some of the components that are required for you to have an in-depth understanding of, so that we are able to then compile our own personal budget.
We'll be looking into an example of compiling a budget in the next episode. Watch out for it. And please remember to jump onto our YouTube channel and subscribe, so that you don't miss any of these episodes and many other developmental focused discussions and conversations that we have at Baobab Chats. Ncumisa, bye-bye for now.